going to train workers to do X, Y, Z. We have some support in our area to do this. That was the intent. And the grant was intended to get to those students really that didn't have the Hathaway. So let's say anybody 18 and up, but let's say you had kids coming in from out of state, weren't educated in Wyoming, didn't have the ability to go to the Hathaway. So the reason it was last dollar in my memory, and that's been a long time ago, was we wanted to make sure they went, and if they qualified for Hathaway, they didn't double dip. If they make sure that they were going through all of the other grants that are available to them, including probably, and I'd have to ask the good community college people that, but including, is there something in workforce development? There's some money there. So we wanted to make sure it was the last dollar in. Well, that program kind of sat there and didn't take off, didn't get funded anymore, kind of sat still in statute. Wyoming's Tomorrow was created from a task force that sat down over a period of time. So Wyoming Works kind of came into the session, and budget cuts, frankly, kind of put an end to all of this. And but Wyoming Works kind of came into the session kind of fresh. It really hadn't gone through an interim. It had been thought about and worked on for quite a while. And so then Wyoming's Tomorrow went through a task force. The task force made a recommendation. Eventually, we I don't know if it was 2019, but anyway, Wyoming's Tomorrow was put into statute with only about $10 million, I think, was appropriated in the last budget. And so that was the whole idea, and I'll let Chairman Harshman really talk to Wyoming's Tomorrow, but really the idea behind that was we made it for 24 years. There was a program that was put in place by LCCC with some money from El Bogan. And that program was for adult learners with the idea of trying to connect them to jobs, and often used, the single mother or whatever that might need some further education to become better in life, whoever that is, to become better in life. And so it had a lot of work and a lot of effort on the sideboards on Wyoming's Tomorrow are more extensive, I would say, probably than Wyoming Works, but all of them I can't tell you for sure back and forth. Well, they were originally, and then actually the Senate peeled a lot of those out. And so that's the idea. So we have these two not necessarily competing programs or scholarships. So the idea behind my 109 was, how do we marry these? Because I've heard, well, why don't we just dump Wyoming's Tomorrow? Why don't we dump Wyoming's Works? So my idea behind 109 was to say, okay, you student that are 24 years of age and older, because you still got to qualify for the Wyoming Tomorrow. If you're a Wyoming Works student, 24 years of age and older, you're going to have a priority in Wyoming's Tomorrow. And the reason behind why I did that is I still believe that student who's a part of a programmatic piece for a job, I think there's a real benefit to get them funded. And I'm also, to be flat honest, trying to work with the Senate in a way to try to find some common ground between these two programs. So my idea was to find a compromise between these two programs. And so when you look at the bill, I'm not going to run through all the bill. You can read it, read the times that are put in there. Really, it comes down to the funding, which is what you guys will really be directing. And House Bill 30 has a different funding mechanism. And then my bill on page 4, section 2, subsection A, sticks $75 million in Wyoming's Tomorrow. So Wyoming's Tomorrow has to have $50 million in it, according to statute, before we're going to allow any of the money generated off of it to be spent on a scholarship. We got 10. So the Education Committee, after meeting with the public over the course of time, we decided on, frankly, about $105 million. Representative Harshman, Chairman Harshman will go through that. What I did in this bill is I said, having learned from a previous speaker, maybe have multiple horses in the race. So I put $75 million into Wyoming's Tomorrow. Just, you never know which bills will float. And so then I do that on section 2, subsection A. And then on subsection B, there was quite a little discussion about, both from the governor's office and from others, about should we have and frankly in committee on Wyoming's Tomorrow, should we have a match? Well, we did have a match, and it was way too much of a match when we first put it in. And but what I put in here was let's just put aside another $5 million, and if we can get corporate or nonprofit match for that $5 million, then as we get that, we would plop it into the endowment. So the $5 million was a carrot to the private industry to bring in some private dollars or to bring in some nonprofit. And there's a nonprofit out there that has expressed an interest to put in a pretty good chunk, not $5 million, but a pretty good chunk of money. And so that's what subsection B does. And then subsection C, I have no idea because I haven't read the bill for a while.
That's the 5 million?
What's that?
That's the 5 million?
Yeah, subsection B is the 5 million. And subsection C, this shall deposit all private or non, it's just incorporates. Yeah, it just does it's the language behind B. And then in D, what I did here, we created two accounts in Wyoming Works. We created a programmatic account, which helped community colleges establish some programs for workforce development. And it's based on criteria, and I don't have all of those in front of me, but others could probably provide you that. And so that has basically run out of money. And I still think there's a lot of good work that can be done out there in workforce development and in developing programs for this Wyoming Works project. And then in E, so I put 15 million in there, just it's arbitrary numbers. And then I put in E, I put in 5 million into the Wyoming Works grant program. The Wyoming Works grant program, and of course I grabbed the wrong handful of papers. It still has some money in it, but I don't know how much is obligated and how much isn't. And so while I'm suggesting in this bill that for those individuals 24 years of age and over, they're in Wyoming Works, they're eligible for Wyoming's Tomorrow, so they're pretty well covered. But what's not covered, I felt, when I wrote this bill, was that 18 to 24 year of age. And so I wanted to put some money into Wyoming Works to make sure that we covered grants for kids that were going into the programmatic piece, particularly for those 18 to 24-year-olds. So my recommendation to you, as you look at these bills, is, as you look at my bill anyway, is I would take out the 75 million out of my bill and leave whatever you're going to do in 30 for Wyoming's Tomorrow. I think about the match, whether you want to see that match continue or not, and whether, I can't remember if we had one in Wyoming's Tomorrow, but Chairman Harshman will go through with that. I think the match is an interesting idea. It's something people have wanted. It is a carrot, so I think consider that. And then obviously I do like the Wyoming Works piece, and I like the Wyoming Works programmatic, and I like the Wyoming Works grant program. You know, having been on appropriations, if you want to trim that, I feel comfortable that you will trim that, just knowing this committee, having sat there, but I would appreciate it if you left a morsel or two in there for those two as we go. So with that, I'm probably going to leave you, but I think Chairman Harshman will walk you through the other, and then I think the good folks in the audience can tell you about the benefit. I just want to say one, and I said this to, I want to see both of these bills ride to the Senate, because I want to give the Senate every opportunity, not necessarily whether the funding's in my bill, every opportunity to find some comfort level with Wyoming's Tomorrow and Wyoming's Works, to feel like it's a program they can continue with and can fund. And I really believe that these two programs together, and Wyoming Works, or Wyoming's Tomorrow specifically, I really think it's a generational opportunity. And I know that's something probably Representative Harshman has said a time or two, but I really see it that way. I see when the Elbogan provided LCCC with the money to do theirs, it was fully taken up. When Elbogan went back and gave money to other community colleges to try this, there was an instant need out there for this adult education and the ability to get people retrained. If we want to have workers in Wyoming, if we want to raise people's lives, I just think this is an outstanding opportunity. So with that, I'd stand for a few questions, and then I'll probably pack it in and let you guys do your work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, you expressed a desire to see the match component of this. How would you envision a company being able to contribute this match? Because they're going to want to be able to have a tax advantage from the standpoint of that contribution. So how would you envision, like I said, them being able to contribute to the state of Wyoming?
So really good question, and I didn't stay for education, but I do know the executive branch had an amendment, and I don't know if it was brought to education. It was. I'm seeing heads nod. So I believe that the executive branch brought an amendment to House Education. It passed, right? It passed, which will allow that. It establishes the mechanism by which they can take a deduction for it. So I believe we've worked that into the bill to make sure we have that ability. So are there any other questions of me, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, Mr. Speaker, on the the administration piece of this. I don't want, in my view, to get in the way of any dollars getting out to help the people that are going to be using the programs. I just wondering if there's a need for an extra amount for administration.
Mr. Chairman, an extra amount for administration. I served on appropriations too long to give an extra amount to administrators to administrate programs, but I don't know the answer to that, just not in my nature, I guess. Mr. Chairman, there might have been one other question. Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiff?
Yes, Speaker Summers, you may have already mentioned this, but can you talk about the preference to persons who are in a credentialed teacher program and why that's important to you?
Repeat that, please.
On page, to be more specific, on page 4, it says third preference shall be given to students enrolled in credential programs approved by the Commission under the Wyoming Works program pursuant to. Fourth preparation shall be given to students enrolled in teacher preparation programs. Could you just sort of tell us your thoughts of why you wanted that extra preference for students enrolled in teacher preparation programs?
Mr. Chairman? Representative Stiff?
Yes.
So that was my personal bias. I don't know that you can strike that. I'm certainly on the floor. If they did, I don't know, maybe they did in education as far as that goes. I guess over the course of the interim, what the Education Committee heard over and over is the inability to recruit teachers. And somebody said rightfully so, well, it's really hard to recruit nurses, really hard to recruit doctors. Why are you choosing this? Choosing this because this is my bias? Because I was in that committee that heard those testimonies, and I thought maybe it was a way to try to use the carrot of our scholarship programs to say, hey, we understand we have, and maybe if we're going to keep it, maybe it should include that you come back to Wyoming, right? Maybe it should be a little more fleshed out than that. I'm not married to that piece of it, but I felt it's important at the time. Any other questions?
Further questions?
Not? Thank
All
you.
right, Mr. Speaker, appreciate your explanation. Let's swip to the ex-speaker and now chairman.
Yeah,
Please proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I was on joint education last session, last interim. That's why I was asked to come here and talk to you about the money. It was actually in this room where we voted on this bill. I think it was sitting right here, actually. And to fully fund this. And so I'd just take you to the financial part. As you know, we passed a law last year, has 10 million in the endowment right now that will flow in on July 1st. And the bill, I guess the financial parts of the bill, the parts you're probably interested in are on page, it's really 2 and 3. It's the funding of the bill. And you can see the size of the reserve account moves to 21%. Same conversation we had yesterday about the 988 endowment to try to get to a 5X fund so we can invest it for a total rate of return. Then, Mr. Chairman, on paragraph C and then Romanets 1, 2, and flipping over through 5, those are all based on the 5-year average of the fund, but in year 1, you don't have a 5-year average. In year 2, you don't have a 5-year. And so that's just a stair stepping in is all that language is. I've seen LSO write this differently in one little paragraph, and I've seen it this way in like 6 little paragraphs. So this is the long version of it, but it's very clear, right? The spending policy on it. And then, Mr. Chairman, on section 2 on page 5.
So just to follow up on that.
Yeah, sure.
If you front load this with programmatic dollars, then why do you need the stair step?
Mr. Chairman, programmatic dollars, this is just, I don't know what the word programmatic dollars means. What do you mean by that?
I mean, if you fund, if you contribute to the endowment, but then you give another certain amount of dollars to begin the, so you have available funds for the next 2 or 3 years to fund the scholarships while this thing matures through the interest and dividends. I'm curious, why do we really need the stair step?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it just controls the amount of spend that is possible. It keeps it at the 5%. So, and it can be 5% of a 5-year average because we don't have a 5-year average yet. We only have a 1-year average. So that's just controlling the amount of the spend. So whatever this corpus is, that'll be the first
What you can spend.
5%, whatever it is, whether we arrive at 50 or 75 or 100 million, which is, you know, the fully funded of the corpus.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I believe the way it's structured this is with the money that goes in, the investment earnings would not be available this fall. It'd be available the following fall. And so putting in that X amount, you've got 15 in there, allows them to provide scholarships this year.
Absolutely. And maybe I misunderstood the question, but that's why the reserve account, you draw from the reserve account initially. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, on page 5, section 2, you can see the dollar amounts. I'll first go to paragraph B, that 90 million from the LSRA, which is scheduled to be 3 billion at the end of the biennium. 90 million plus the 10 million we've already appropriated equals the 100 million for the endowment. And why 100 million? Kicks off 5 million a year, right? And that'll fund about 700 new scholarships per year, right? So a total of about 1,400, just under that. And why that number? Why 700 a year? Because we know with LCCC and Western Wyoming and the other community colleges, and they can talk to this, it's going to fill it right up. And we have that much need to do this. And so really, so that's that part. The 90 million getting to 100 million, then the 5% will fund at $3,600 a year, about 700 Wyoming people a year. And so a cohort for 2 years would be 1,400.
2 years.
That's right, 1,400. So, and then why 15 million? So you take the 100 million times 3%, because we figured 2% dividends interest, 100 million times 3% times 5 years. And that's 15 million for the 5X reserve account. So then the whole amount can be invested by our chief investment officer in that group, state loan investment board, state treasurer's office to get total rate of return. So we can actually grow the corpus at a faster rate, move from about 4.5% to about 6.5% return. So that's that part. And then just real quickly, for members who were not in the legislature, this effort kind of started in 2018, brought a bill and a budget amendment in 2019, current governor's first year. Both bill and budget amendment passed, went to the other body underneath the Senate. That was, I think, my first year as speaker. President Bebout said, he goes, well, you already have a bill, so let's kill the budget amendment. The bill passes the Senate. Excuse me. The bill died, you have a budget amendment. The budget amendment gets into the budget, goes to the governor's office and vetoed, line itemed out. And so that's the first start. And this was a great example of it takes 3 times for a good bill to pass. And then the next year, went through it. We had a task force, met. We met all over. Our first meeting was in Pinedale, and then COVID hit. We kept meeting online. And finally, last year, the 3rd time, the bill successfully went through both bodies, signed by the governor. And I will just say this is not a unique idea. And when I was speaker, you get to meet and you get these other opportunities and really model this off other states. And really, where is the gap missing? And this started even years before this with the Attainment Council. And it looks at Wyoming's workforce and where our population and demographics and what we need, what our businesses need. And the work, and there's folks here can talk about the Attainment Council. And then that gets folded in with Governor Meads and Dow. And then we were just going through the worst financial deal in 3 decades, right? The spring of 16, when this all started downhill in a hurry. And so then there was this impetus to get going. And so really model this after the Tennessee Promise. Kentucky's got them. Most states have programs like this to retrain adults who are already raising their kids here, already here. And this is, I'll just say this, Mr. Chairman, and the good speaker, I don't expect you to cut anything out of either one of these bills. I'd hope you'd pass them out. I sat in your chair for 4 years. I sat in these chairs for 10 years. You've got a once in a lifetime chance. Our predecessors had it with the Perm Mill Trust Fund. They didn't go cheap on it. Our predecessors in 2005, I was part of that with the Hathaway. We didn't go cheap on that. We went 405 million, put 120 million in the endowed professors. That'll live on, and it's already changing the state. And this will change our state. And so at a moment when we have over a $2 billion surplus, fighting about ways to save, I think, frankly, this and a few other little ways are the top of the list. And so I appreciate your consideration of that. And this will be a legacy of this boom. And when the inevitable downturns come, we can retrain and change people's family trees. So it's a subject I'm passionate about. I hope both these bills travel forward. They'll both continue the races. One of them will break its leg and not make it to the end. We know that. And but let's keep the horses in the race. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Harshman, you mentioned that if we funded it right now, it's 700 kids per year. So what's the target? I mean, how much are you hoping to get, or how many students do you believe would, on a yearly basis, take advantage of the program if we, I guess, use the term loosely, fully fund it to its maximum some years out?
Chairman, we think it'll fill up the first year. There'll be 700 people in Wyoming taking advantage of this next fall.
But, and Mr. Chairman, if we were to put 400 or 500 million in, I mean, what's the target? Are we looking at 1,500 kids per year, or have you guys just wanting to get it up and going and then?
Mr. Chairman, and there's folks here in the audience can probably
Address that.
testify that, but I think that 700 is a pretty good number. I think it's a good start, kind of looking at our capacity and our need. 700 kids a year. And that'll, we think that's a solid number.
So can I run one more question? Sure. Want to harass the witness. So you don't expect to come back in future years and ask for a few more million in hopes that we get 1,500 kids that'll take advantage of it, or 1,500, people that'll take advantage of it?
Mr. Chairman,
I'm looking for that upper
the answer
number.
is no, but I think, we'll soon be gone and be pictures on the wall, and there'll be other people in these seats, and they'll deal with that if it needs to be dealt with, I think. And it's much like the Wildlife Trust Fund, we put 106 million, sat for years, we had another boom, you just threw 80-some million in it a year or so ago. And so I think those will be folks who take our spots in the future will probably decide that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harshman, this ask is for $105 million out of the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account. And I haven't looked at the goldenrod projection recently on it. Big picture question, is there some kind of target that we should have for the overall fund balance or projected fund balance in the LSRA when we walk out of here at the end of the session? I mean, in your view, what should it be? Should it be 1.5? Should it be 1.8? Should it be 2? Because if we just adopted this, then we're saying it's going to be less than what it would otherwise be by 105 million, I think is how the bill reads.
Mr. Chairman, man, I'm really glad you asked that question. And the LSRA, and saw former Representative Illaway, all of us, he was one of the founders of that. And it's called the Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account for a reason. And what is the number? Well, it's currently the largest in America, right? It's the largest. We have over a year of general fund spending saved, and it has a refuel mechanism. That's the beauty of that. And that was the deal when I was sitting in his chair, we sat down negotiations. So that's a beautiful thing. So the LSRA, some people say, has been a big blessing and it's been a big curse. I think the blessing number is about 1.5 billion, right about at a year, and that is unbelievable reserve. Nobody has a year of spending in reserve like that. And I think government is not a bank. I don't think 2 billion, 3 billion, government shouldn't have all this money sitting around. I think to be conservative like we are, make sure we pay our bills in cash and don't have to borrow any money, I think 1.5 billion. And then I think if you kept $500 million on that school side, it's going to be 900 million or whatever. And whether you take this out of that money or whatever, I think in the end, if we leave here, now this isn't spending money, it's saving it in a different spot, keep in mind. And, but if you save this in a different way, but I think in our liquid savings, what I call emergency kind of fund, rainy day fund, 1.5 and about 5 on the school side, man, unbelievable. We're in great shape. And so thanks for the question. I appreciate that.
So, Mr. Chairman, you said both bills should move forward. So do you want 75 plus 90 to go in the fund? I mean, I don't see a provision that says one or the other, or one, but not the other.
Mr. Chairman, and of course, this is not your first rodeo or horse race. One of these horses is not going to make it. And I think we just keep that. It'll look that way, on the goldenrod. It'll look like once this bill, if it passes committee of the whole, it'll start showing that knock. And that might make your job easier, who knows? But one of them is going to fall off. We know that. And I think the good speaker's idea, working with his colleagues down the hall, is to let them kind of have those options as well. And we're probably good with both of either one of them.
There's now a provision in the budget that puts 40 million into the Wyoming's tomorrow. But there is a provision on that that kicks in only if these fail, right?
I think so. And we can clean all that up too. It'll all get reconciled. We're not going to put 220 million in the fund. You guys will make sure of that.
Okay, we're already live, and we ought to take roll call before we take action. So, thank you.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Sherwood. Here. Representative Stith.
Here.
Representative Walters.
Here.
Representative Swanitzer.
Here.
Chairman Nicholas.
Here. And so we're in the process of just taking an explanation of House Bill 30 and House Bill 109 because they do many of the same things. So, committee, what's your preference? Which bill you want to take up first out of the two? And are there any motions?
Mr. Chairman,
Please?
I'd like to look at House Bill 30 first.
Okay, please proceed. Okay.
Well, should we take public comment before we work on it?
Sure. Any public comment on House Bill 30? We just took it up. Obvious mostly for re-referral, and then we're talking about the dollar amounts on House Bill 30, which is Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program amendments.
Right, so Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, Erin Taylor, representing the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. I just wanted to be here to offer any answers for some of the questions that may have come up. It seems that you have a good understanding of how this bill is operating versus what is in the budget, right, with the expenditure operating immediately. I think that would be the one thing that's really important for speaking from the institutions, and of course, the university students can access it at the university as well, as that we can use it right away. So some consideration of the opportunity to use scholarships right away rather than waiting a year, I think would be really important. You have a fact sheet in front of you, so just speaking to the appropriation, I don't have anything other to say other than that, of course, we support this. And how you work that out is up to you. But if there's any other questions on the program on either this bill or the other one, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I understand, my question relates to the projected, I guess, $4.5 million or so a year that would be available for spending for Wyoming's Tomorrow if we do this out of this bill. What's the projected need? Like, what's the demand going to be? Do we need this much money? In other words, how many students would you expect would take advantage of this? Do you have any sense for, whether there'll be a waiting list? Will there be applicants who don't get any money because it's oversubscribed, that kind of thing? Just how much money, to me, these are all just big numbers. I'm trying to figure out, I think Representative Harshman mentioned something about 700 students, but how many students would that much money serve if this were adopted as is?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Stith, I think I'm going to answer that question in a kind of a roundabout way. We have some proven programs out there, and that's what you heard from Speaker Summers with the LCCC Rediscover program, the Elbogen dollars that have gone to the colleges, but we largely don't know exactly what the demand will be because adult students don't know that we have this out there to some degree, to a large degree, they don't know. It's not part of our culture in Wyoming to know that this is out there. And when you consider the full cost of attendance, those are things like providing for childcare, which is a big deal and other costs. So it's not just tuition. I don't think we know the true answer in terms of what the demand could be. Because often those sorts of costs are the ones that hold people back from even applying in the first place and going back to school, because they can't manage life without having all those things taken care of, if that makes sense. If you want to get technical about the dollars and the flows, I do have the phone a friend over here with the Community College Commission with Michael Swank, and I think he can answer that directly. But kind of more broadly, I think we don't quite know yet who might take advantage of this. And once we could fully advertise it, but we have proven that the programs that have done it with the Elbogen money and the LCCC Rediscover, they have been taken advantage of at a high level.
Okay, any motions?
Clark has a question.
Oh, Clark?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think, again, the whole purpose of the question is to say, well, right now, the community college system has a head count of about 26,000 students, full-time equivalents about 13,000 roughly, I think, roughly speaking. So the question is, do we, if we make this program available to older students, then are you expecting 10% more people? Are you expecting 5%? Is there any estimate of how much money we need?
Go ahead, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Swank, Chief Financial Officer for the Wyoming Community College Commission. if I understand Representative Stith's question, so if you look at our last enrollment report, the credit head count was roughly 25,500 students. A little less than a third of that would be students that fall into the age range for the Wyoming's Tomorrow bill, 18 to 20, or 18 to 64. Obviously, there's a lot of people in that group that may be taking classes, but may also be in a career that they don't need reskilling, upskilling, all that sort of stuff. In terms of who would actually utilize this program, the original analysis provided to the task force and the various individuals and groups that have been working on this since roughly the 2019 task force was that a $100 million endowment would hopefully spin off roughly $5 million per year. If you do an annual scholarship, which would max out at $3,600 per year for 2 terms, you'll get roughly 1,400 students per year that could utilize this program. The program is in statute that also has requirement that if there is not insufficient funds, the commission has the ability to prioritize and to scale back the program to whatever funding is available in the expenditure account.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah. Michael, if I can figure this out, my understanding was 3,600 over 2 years, 1,800 a year. So if you could correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Mr. Chairman, the per term maximum scholarship limit is $1,800. So for 2 terms, it would be $3,600 per academic year.
Okay, I mean, we're kind of
Mr. Chairman, I've got a
getting into the weeds. It's at 1:20, we've got 2 more bills after this, plus real bills. So,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion. To get a second, I'll explain a little further, but I would reduce the 90 million in the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Endowment Fund to 40 million to reflect what we've done in the budget bill. And that adds to the 10 million that we put in last year. So that would mature and allow for proceeds to be distributed. So I'd reduce the 90 to 40, and then I think there's validity on wanting to be able to start putting scholarships out this next year or this next fall, but I would reduce the $15 million that's going into the expenditure account to $5 million, from 15 down to 5.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
A question.
Go ahead, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you anticipate then the 40 million staying in the supplemental budget bill and these 2 things complementing each other?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, as you recall, in the budget bill, we said the 40 million stays unless there's another bill passed. And if the other bill passes, the 40 in the budget bill is deleted.
And so then, how would that reflect? So we're just on 30, is that
Yeah,
correct?
and I've got a suggestion on
Okay.
109.
Further discussion?
Question on the amendment.
Question on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Move the bill.
Yeah.
Move the bill. Now, do we need to revote on the amendment? Sorry.
Any other amendments on the funding of House Bill 30?
Question on the bill?
Question on the bill as amended. Roll call.
Representative Henderson. Aye. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Aye. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Okay, 109. Move the bill?
Move.
Moved. I don't know if we have to move it. We have any amendments?
Mr. Chairman?
Public comment? Close public comment. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and this would, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this would reflect likewise to what we did in 30. I would reduce the 90 million. Oh, yes, 75, yes, thank you, 75 million. How about I get on the right bill? 75 million to 40 million. And then if you'll come down to the student works grants for this Wyoming's Tomorrow, you'll see that it's at 5 million. I would leave that alone because that reflects what we've done in our previous action. And then come back up to the 15 million that's requested for the Wyoming Works program and reduce that to 10. Then, Mr. Chairman, I would put a footnote in there that if both 30 and this bill passes, that this bill has rules,
Priority.
or whatever the right term
Can we
is.
do that? We can. Yeah. Comment?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, on page 5 of the bill, and to the top of page 6 is the Wyoming Works program. And so for clarity, you are reducing the program account of Wyoming Works from 15 to 10, but leaving the student grant account for Wyoming Works at 5 million.
That's correct. Thank you.
Further discussion? Everyone understand that?
Could I get clarification on which bill would take precedent?
We're on
Thank you.
109.
109.
And
Okay,
Mr.
everyone understand? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, on page 4, subparagraph B, where it appropriates $5 million, is that left in place by your motion?
Currently, yes.
Yes. And if you recall, we took out the matching in the budget, but the governor likes the matching concept, and so we're kind of just,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
go ahead.
also in here, so what we have in here is we have 10, in my amendment, we have 10 to the Wyoming Works program account, 5 in here to the Wyoming Works student grant account, both the same program. We have 40 million to the Wyoming's Tomorrow program. In 30, we have 40 to the Wyoming Tomorrow program plus 5 in their expenditure account.
Right.
So I would also add an additional 5 million in this bill to the Wyoming Tomorrow's expenditure account, and then that would conform in total expenditure suggestions to what we did in 30.
That makes sense. Everyone understand that?
Yep.
But do we have to add a new section to do that?
Maybe, but we'll worry about that in the drafting. We can make it happen.
Okay. Conceptually, and then we'll review.
And then, yes, and so then we'll make that section changed in the bill as part of the amendment.
Okay, Jackie, do you understand what we just said?
I will reach out to Representative
Larson.
Leah Larson and get clarification for sure.
All right, fair enough.
Aaron, does that make sense? Michael, does that make sense? Okay. So that's my amendment.
Okay, as amended, on the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Any other motions? Roll call, as amended.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer. Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Okay, we had,
81.
is that a re-referral?
It is.
81, House Bill 81. This is the hospital supplemental payments statutory fix.
Mr. Chairman,
ahead.
move the bill and then I can explain it, or do you want me to explain it and then move the bill? Move the bill. Move the bill.
Moved and seconded, moved
So,
by
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Walters, seconded by Representative Henderson. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is an upper payment limit bill like we see here where the hospitals, in this one, the hospitals assess themselves a fee so that they can capture more federal funds. So the funding in here is 3.8 million. That comes from the private hospital assessment, and then matching 3.8 from federal funds.
Okay, pretty simple.
Move to pass.
Move do pass. Yeah. All those, roll call, please.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stipp.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
What's the other reread?
Aye. For the,
Oh, Mr. Chairman, thank you. That other position is paid for as general fund position. Thank you. Yeah, 97,000. So
FYI.
I apologize for allowing, I had it in my head that that's paid for out of the assessment, but it's not. Thank you.
Okay,
right.
we're going to hold off a little bit on the water bill. We'll do it, but we got two other bills real quick. I think, do we have time? How long are these going to take?
Heiner's bill won't take.
Yeah, let's do do that. That's number 2, House Bill 2, is that
House
right?
Bill 2.
House Bill 2.
Scott?
Town officers salary waiver. Representative Heiner, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
All those in favor say aye.
In the interest of talking less and saying more, I've got a little bit of a handout for you, but let me tell you a little background. Last year in 2022, there was a routine audit of one of the towns in my district. In that audit, they found out that the mayor was not receiving salary as required by statute. A mayor has to take salary for the term of his office. When he was sworn in, he told everyone he didn't want to receive wages, so they didn't pay him for a number of years. Because of the audit, they found out that the statute requires that to be paid, and so the town had to pay him a number of years of back pay. So as we looked at this, we looked at 3 alternatives, and I handed out the statutes for you because I know when I'm on committee, I like to see the statute without having time to look it up. But the underlines are something I've added, so that's not in statute, the underlines. So, but there's 3 options we looked at. One of them would be that they changed the wages of the mayor based on his request not to be paid. But as you are aware in statute 9-1, 15-2-103, you cannot change the salary of an elected official during their term of office. So if they would have changed his salary to 0, it wouldn't have taken effect until the next term. Coincidentally, he lost the election, and if they would have done that, the next mayor would have went without any pay through no fault of his own. So that was not a good option. The second option is to have the mayor donate his wages back to the town or to some charitable organization. But as you're aware, that creates revenue for IRS tax reporting. You have revenue on one side, and if you don't have enough deductions to get past the standard deduction, you've got revenue and no more deductions, so you end up paying additional taxes because of that, which kind of penalizes the elected official for trying to go without pay. So the third option is to amend statute, as we're trying to do here. And going to the bill, I'll just jump to page 2. All we're doing is adding to section 15-2-103, we're adding that any elected or appointed official who are entitled to receive a salary or compensation under this section may elect not to receive the salary or compensation at any time during their term. So that's the heart of the bill. In the handout, I also gave you a newspaper article about another town in this part of the state that falls under the same statute where they elected not to receive wages. I don't have permission to make that public, so I handed it out to you just for reference. So with that, I stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a couple comments that would affect the budget, if I may. I mean, if we were going to look at this, I would like to have a couple of extra statements in there. Sometimes you might have a mayor that doesn't feel they're worth the pay, that they want to have. And so what happens if they only want to take half a pay or a fourth of the pay? You know, they don't feel they deserve the 100,000. So I would like some reference to if they, because this sounds like they have to take it all or none, is my point. And then my other point would be, if they decide not to take it, that they should have a provision in here that they have to file with the office that pays them with, like, prior to maybe 2 weeks ahead of time. So then there's no guesswork about if they decided to. And then if they go ahead and take their payment, then, I mean, unless they sign an official notice that they don't want it. So those are the two suggestions I'd present to you that you might think about before it hits the floor. Thank you.
So just to comment on that, as this is written, it says that the elected officer is entitled to receive salary or compensation under this section, may elect not to receive the salary or compensation at any time during the term.
That's why I wanted
So you could say, I'm going to waive next month, or you could say, I think you could say, I'm going to waive half of it for a month. So in essence, you can basically do what you say.
with advance notice. And then you can't come back and say,
Change your mind?
well, otherwise you get your paycheck. Oops, so. If you, Mr. Chairman, my point is you take your paycheck, that's what the statutes say you're going to get paid. We make an exception to the statute for whatever reason. If you don't want to take it, you got to sign official notice that I don't want to be paid. But there may be some circumstances where they only feel they're worth half of what the statutes say, or 90%, or whatever the case may be. So as long as they make official notice ahead of time to state exactly how much they want to be paid, as long as it's less than, I just would present that as an amendment for consideration.
Simply, it would be an insertion saying section may be like to, not to receive the salary or a portion of the salary. Right?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, adding on to that thought, I think the other, and I don't know where it would go in, I think it needs to the good representative's point, needs to say, and a notice will be, or documents will be filed with the county clerk indicating that elected official's desire.
With the proper person, because it probably would, the city would report it to county clerk.
I agree with the proper person, but also with a certain amount of notice to give that clerk or whoever it is time to shut off the automatic payment if it's in a big city, you know, where paychecks come out automatically.
Maybe 30 days prior to the next pay period.
If that's all right with the sponsor.
Well, if the bill's in front of us, we can do what we want to.
I like advice.
Mr. Chairman?
Any comments on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the statement at any time allows some flexibility in that payment. So they may elect, when they're having extra meetings during the month, they may say that I elect not to be paid for these extra meetings, but for the regular meetings, they may elect to be paid for that. So they can switch in and out at any time with working with the town clerks, of course, for that payment. But recognize that I reviewed the mayor's salaries throughout the different towns in the state of Wyoming. The vast majority of them only get a few $100s, maybe $1,000 to $3,000 a year. So very small amount. There are some in larger cities that get more, and they have more responsibilities, and they deserve any pay that they get. But you know, if you're getting paid $30,000, you can donate some of that to charity and exceed the standard deduction and be able to deduct that on your taxes as charitable deduction. This is more geared for those smaller towns that don't make very much compensation for the vast labors that they put in. But I do appreciate your comments, Representative Zawans.
And Mr. Chairman, my only comment, when we pass the law, it's statewide, so.
So I don't think this would apply to larger cities because this one has the $24,000 cap to it. So it's for small communities.
Mr. Chairman, question to the bringer. Why didn't you include larger cities and counties to where all of those elected officials on that local basis, regardless of population, would have this same opportunity?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't change the cap of 24,000. Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, I'm sorry. The cap of $24,000, I didn't attempt to change because that was not within the scope of what I was trying to do here. If we change that ceiling, that would open up a different topic for this bill.
Okay, do you want to bring an amendment, or do you want to do it on the floor? What's your preference?
Right here.
I don't have the exact number.
Get it close.
Well, you could do a committee of the whole.
So,
Yeah, that's
Mr.
what my
Chairman?
original thought.
I would move to amend on page 2, line 12. After the word receive, insert the phrase all or any portion of.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
there is other testimony here for this bill as well.
Oh, we have public comment on this, huh?
Sorry.
We're going to pass it. We don't need a whole lot of public comment.
Okay. Are you finished with?
Yeah, thanks.
Stay close, Scott.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just one quick comment, other than appreciate what the sponsor's doing here. Some form of at any time is important in here, and the reason is in discussion with department, I'm sorry, for the record, David Fraser, Executive Director, Wyoming Association of Municipalities. In discussion with the Department of Audit, it seems that you can make this option prior to taking office, but if you don't, then you're in here. But that doesn't always occur. We had one council, for example, that during the pandemic opted as a group not to take their salary, and of course that wasn't at the beginning of any of their terms of office. So that's really kind of the operative thing that the sponsor's getting to here. Really, presently, without this, you can have those two options. You have to opt before you even start. Once you're elected, but before you start, you have to make that option, or you have to follow the other course, which is to donate it back or to donate it elsewhere. But then, of course, you're creating a tax liability for yourself. So again, you hadn't amended that, but there'd been some discussion about this at any time part, and that is important that's kind of the operative phrase in this, because it allows that option to be made anytime during the term of office. With that, I would certainly stand for any questions, but that's all I'd have to add, other than what's been said.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have a slightly different question. Do you see any reason to not allow this for first-class cities?
Thank you for the question through the chairman. No opinion on that. I think just this was a simple way to amend this statute, and I don't think that we've had to my knowledge, we haven't had the issue in any of the larger cities. It's mostly been a small city thing. And as a side note, regardless of how the outcome, the outcome of this, it's obvious to me that that WAM can do a little more educating on this issue, so our folks know what they can and can't do. And so kind of however this comes out, we'll plan to incorporate that into our trainings, and also we have a mayor council handbook that we provide, and we'll make sure that that gets into there. So again, it's obvious to me that a little more education wouldn't hurt despite the outcome, but no, there's no reason I know of that it only applies to these. Other than that's where the problem's been. The Department of Audit doesn't really do the same thing with the bigger cities. They've got other requirements that this tends to be something that they do with the smaller communities.
Okay, any further questions? So I have an amendment. If you go to page line 12, after section, put a comma with a written notice, with no less than 2 weeks written notice, comma, may elect. Moving second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Friendly amendment to that.
ahead.
Written notice is filed with the town clerk. Do they have to file it with somebody so that written notice, because I can't,
That's fine.
if I'm the mayor, I don't want to write it out and leave it on my own desk.
Have clerks.
Yes, yeah, that would,
I'm good with it.
sorry, I
As
answered out of
amended,
order.
friendly amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Question.
Okay, any further amendments? Question on the bill. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman.
As amended? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment. I would add a new section.
Let's do that from the floor. Let's not-
Okay, to the floor.
Let's not be mischievous.
Roll call, please.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. So we'll let you work with the amendments on the floor as well. Okay. All right, let's really quickly, let's go to the ominous water bill, since you guys are waiting here.
Hey, Jason. On this water bill, 93.
All right, can we get this done in 15 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jason Mead with Water
Sorry to
Development
make you
Office.
wait, guys. So,
No problem.
all right, go ahead.
So you've got a 3-ring binder in front of you that has a number of things in it. I'll just let you know what's in there real quick. Right inside the front cover is a summary sheet of the bill. It's a blue sheet, looks like a spreadsheet. Under tab A is just a brief description of our program. Under tab B are the existing account balances in our 3 accounts, account 1, 2, and 3. And then after you get into tab C, these are the actual recommendations for the specific projects located in the bill. So knowing
Just
we're,
walk us through those quickly.
yep. So go back to the blue sheet right inside the front cover. The first block projects is account 1, our new development projects. We have 5 projects located for funding or appropriation under that account for a total dollar amount of $1,955,060. The second block of projects is our account 2 rehabilitation account. We have 7 projects. We're looking for appropriations on there for a dollar amount of $9,368,240. The third block of projects, or section 2 of the bill, are our amendments to existing projects. This year we have quite a few amendments, 18 different amendments. In account 1, that equates to $8,869,880, and the amendments out of account 2 equate to $3,020,910. You'll notice on that blue sheet in the far right column, especially under account 2 or that second block, you see it says C note 1. And what we are requesting is to move or transfer funding from account 1 to account 2 to more or less be a budget balancer for, because we've got a lot of requests out of account 2 and it gets less of the mineral severance distribution account taxes. So in section 3, which is down towards the bottom of the page, we're asking for a transfer of funds of $11.2 million from account 1 to account 2 to cover that. Section 4 of the bill is a transfer of general fund money of $50 million to account 3, which is our dam and reservoir account. This was an amendment brought by the Select Water Committee during the review of our draft bills in December. Our account 3 balance is down to roughly a little less than $7 million of unappropriated funds. The reason for that being is we've appropriated dollars towards 4 different construction projects, reservoir construction projects, as well as having worked on feasibility studies and planning and permitting of other construction projects since the initial setting up of that account in 2005. So in 2005, there was an influx of funds from account 1 and then also from budget reserve to set up account 3 dams and reservoirs. The mineral severance distribution to that account is only 0.5% from the distribution account, which equates to about $775,000 a year. So in order to get projects done in the future or build additional reservoirs in the future, I think it's always been known that there need to be another influx of funds at some point. And not to speak for the Select Water Committee, but I believe the intent was they saw additional revenues this year and wanted to take advantage of trying to replenish that account this year.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just have one on that Arapahoe pipeline and tank. That thing's been in here since Moses left Omaha. And I think we've given several extensions. We got another, is this 2-year extension this year? Is that one we granted last year? And I'm just curious, Jason, if you can tell us, when are they going to get that done?
Mr. Chairman, the Arapahoe pipeline and tank looked like it was a 2015 appropriation originally. Of course, that's with the tribe's Northern Arapahoe Business Council. I think they were having some issues getting easements put in place on that particular project. The design began back in 2016. And of course, now with the inflation that we've seen running rampant with construction projects, the costs have gone up. They also have some rural development funds that are about ready to expire. So we're looking to complete portions of the project, and I believe there's a transmission line that would be put off, and expect them to come back for additional funds from that, or that, and from rural development to cover that.
So, Mr. Chairman, follow up. In those situations, and it doesn't matter if it's me or whomever, if they haven't got their ducks in a row and then it's put off that length of time and costs go up, why should the state bear that? If they would have done it, if everything would have been in place and done it, it would have been done on those dollars and so on. It makes me anxious that then we'd allow them to come back for the enhanced stuff when we put it off that long.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree with anything you've said.
Okay.
We try to keep sponsors moving along.
When was the last time that we did a cash general fund or other to Water 3? I think we've done it before. I'm trying to remember when. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman.
And my other question is, why 50 million? Why not 25? Why not 40? You have particular projects in mind, or are you just adopting a nice number for a balance?
Mr. Chairman, we do have some projects besides the aforementioned, other ones we're working on. Some of them are in a NEPA evaluation now. We haven't really got into the construction phase of them. It's to assure, so Wyoming is about the only state that builds these reservoirs, or rebuilds them or raises them. And it's to assure that we can continue to build storage within the state and try to.
So my question is then, why wouldn't you do it on an as-need basis? So you have a program, you find out what the cost is, and then you, as opposed to just putting money in the pot and waiting for that to be designed or approved or.
Mr. Chairman, we're down to under $7 million in the account, and these reservoir projects, one of them was bid at around $80 million, and it needs to be rebid, and it may double. We don't know how much will be there. Even the 50 million might be fairly insignificant. And I've been around for 12 years and watched the ebbs and flows that we get from minerals. And we've had a crash three different times that I know of. And we thought, well, it was here. And before we put a bunch of money into the permanent mineral trust fund that we can't retrieve, we probably would put it here. It would still be savings. And at other times, that savings account has been available for other programs that we've had.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add to, I guess I liken to it, we're going to send our kids to college one day, and we need to start putting away money now. So not knowing what revenues are going to be like in the future, and if we get a large project such as a West Fork Reservoir or a New Fork Reservoir that maybe is not so expensive, it'd be a lot more of a painful hit in 1 year rather than when you can maybe put some money aside little by little to get to that point in the future. But
well, I don't disagree with that. In fact, if we created a reservoir fund, if we had a target reservoir, then we could start putting money into it as opposed to just sitting it in an account waiting for something to happen. But, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd really liked your analogy about your college savings account, but wouldn't you kind of like that college savings account to grow at the greatest rate possible? And if we put this money into Water 3, it gets invested differently, and it gets invested at about a 1.5% increase rate of return per year versus the general funds, which are up closer to 6% per year. So it would make more sense, financial sense, to leave this where it is, and when the projects come up, then transfer the money so that we can generate more income off of that. Because this 50 million at the differential, it's going to cost us a little over $2 million a year in lost opportunity cost just from the investment side of it right there alone. So your $50 million project could have $2 million in inflation available immediately if we don't do this right now. So not a question, but just a statement that I'm not comfortable moving this money with no projects in mind at this time.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman. Chairman Eklund, you indicated that there's some projects, some reservoir projects and stuff in mind, but where do I find them? Where do I see where those are at?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have that in the blue book for you today. On our website, we have a list of projects that we're currently working on under the Dam and Reservoir Program link. I've got a copy of that here today.
Could you just share with us what they are?
Sure. So West Fork Reservoir, we've all heard of that one. We're just starting NEPA on that particular project. The original estimate back in 2017 was roughly $80 million. And as part of the NEPA process, that construction cost estimate will be updated and the economics updated. So
all, realistically, when will that project reasonably start?
Mr. Chairman, I would anticipate NEPA, I can't remember the exact schedule, I want to say to be finished in 2024, and then probably a year to design the project. So assuming there was some overlap there, once you knew NEPA was looking good, you could potentially complete that in 2024, the design, and go to construction in 2025.
Okay.
New Fork Reservoir is another one that we're completing an environmental assessment on, the enlargement of New Fork Lakes. And the current cost estimate was $12 million. That's several years old as well. So probably will go up just like any other construction project.
That's an EA, so.
Yeah.
That can be done quicker and probably get to the drawing board faster.
That's right. Mr. Chairman, that one's getting near the end of the EA, we feel like, so could potentially be getting into design as early as next year.
How long does design take?
I'd say typically about a year on these reservoir projects. Besides that, Bull Creek Reservoir up near Buffalo, Wyoming is another one we're looking at, and I'm kind of focusing on the ones that are further along in our process. Some we're still doing feasibility analyses and so on and so forth, but that one was last estimated at around 120 million. And it's been a while since the cost estimate's been updated. We've been looking at federal funding and the potential for federal funding. That would be the next step on that particular project to try to make our state dollars stretch further. So we have not started NEPA on that particular project. And then we have probably 10 more projects that are in various levels of feasibility studies and so on.
Would you send that to us, please?
Sure.
Yes.
I'll probably just send you the link, maybe.
But you can
Or I can
understand
send
our
you the-
problems. We want to find a way that we can maximize the return on the dollars for you and for us. So just put 50 million in the account where it sits there basically like a checking account for 2 years or 3 years doesn't make really much sense to us. So we've got to figure out a better way to do this. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Could you explain, so on page 47, there's a reference to the Goshen Irrigation District Tunnel Rehabilitation Project, and I'm just trying to sort out how this project relates to the Goshen Irrigation District bill that we passed, or portion of a bill that appropriated $23 million. So is this the same project, a different project? And is the budget here inside the 23 million? I'm just not familiar with how those relate to each other. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the Goshen Irrigation District tunnel rehabilitation on page 47 is for the design of the project, which was appropriated last year. You probably don't recall, but the discussion at the time was 2.35 million. 49% of that was a 67% grant, 33% loan to the Goshen Irrigation District. If you recall, about half the lands irrigated by that utilize water through the tunnels are in Nebraska. The Select Water Committee at the time thought, well, maybe there's potential to utilize some funding through the Goshen Irrigation District to help provide a loan to that 51% or the Nebraska piece of that. Since then, Nebraska has found their own money to handle their 51%. However, the design costs have gone up. And so what this does is takes that original 2.35 million appropriation, gets rid of that 51% loan piece that was somewhat meant for Nebraska through Goshen Irrigation District as a loan, and putting that all into, it's restructuring the original legislation to have that all as a 6733 to account for the additional design costs. So that would all go towards the Goshen Irrigation District, 49% of the design, if that's clear.
Thank you.
Is that a loan? Is that loan? Is that a loan to the district, or is it a grant?
I'm sorry, the 2.35 million? It would be a 67% grant, 33% loan.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the bill? Move the bill.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any motions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
on page 49, section 4, I would move to remove section 4, the $50 million appropriation to Water 3.
Let's put it down at 15. Let's put that other project. We got some.
I'll amend my motion and a transfer of 15 million and not 50.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reduce the 50 million down to 15 million. Discussion. Question being called. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So I don't want you to think that we don't want to fund the large dam projects, and we'll work with you on figuring out how to set aside money that we can actually invest and secure so that it's there. The part of the other problem was if it's in, you have the capability of moving dollars between level 1, level 2, level 3. And so we just want to make sure it makes sense to have a piggy bank, but we want that piggy bank to make 4 or 5% for inflation and everything else while it's sitting there. So we'll work on that. Go ahead.
You know, we had this, Jason, we hadn't had the same discussion last year when we, on the Goshen project on the 23 million. We could have, it cost us, what, $1 million?
Yeah.
About $1 million a year. We knew we wasn't going to use those funds for a couple, 3 years because we were still in the engineering and design state. The body says, no, we got to do it now, and this isn't your fault, but we could have saved a couple $1 million through income, and so let's just be thinking about how we can do that differently, and this investment income is kind of a big deal, and there's got to be a way to figure this out.
Okay, roll call as amended.
Representative Henderson.
It's 215.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. So we need someone on the floor to carry that amendment. You got it, Tom? Okay, House Bill 2, town officers, or, no, not 2, what, 51. This raises the quarterly payment from $750 to $1,000 for legislators.
This is re-referral, is this correct?
This is a direct.
You, Pat, question on the bill.
Question on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Not having reviewed it carefully, this constituent allowance, does it become effective immediately, or do we have to wait till the next term?
January 14th.
Next
Okay,
term.
next term. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Well, roll call.
Representative Henderson. Aye. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Aye. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. All right, who wants to carry that on the floor?
I will.
It's a management council. Let someone do
Yeah,
that.
management council does.
It's not our bill.
Well,
That's a
just
great
someone
idea.
be ready.
I'll be ready.
Let's make sure that we let Alvin.
You don't think, do you?